Ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher, and as you can see, the suspension is over. The characters remain. Yes, no rollbacks, actually. I was super surprised. But I think the idea was the suspension was punishment enough, and therefore they left the characters intact. So we do have this abundant array of characters. We have every single class in the game, all capped up, but in a sorry state, and we'll talk about that shortly. Now, in terms of the return, actually, the widespread belief, I don't blame anybody for this, including members of my guild, was that I was not going to come back to the game. And that's easy to draw that conclusion because, as I stated at the time of being suspended, it didn't actually bother me. The actual suspension itself, just to be clear on this, the suspension itself didn't bother me. There wasn't particularly a great deal to do in the game anyway. And we had so many great games coming out, and we don't really live stream World of Warcraft. So it was like the suspension itself was a really minor thing, other than the fact that Crucible of Storms was coming out. And that was about it. So when my suspension was lifted and my account was ready to go and I logged in, I kind of logged out again after about 10 minutes. Because all that was facing me was an AP grind. That was it. My druid was 46. The minimum to get into Crucible for our guild, the requirements they'd set was 48. And I just looked at it and it's like, okay, I've waited a month and I've logged back in, and all that really I have to focus on is like islands and world quests. And I looked at the screen and I was like, no, no, I'm not going to do that. So I just logged out again and kind of sat and thought about what is I wanted to do. And then I realized that honestly, yeah, BFA's got a lot of problems. It's got a lot of problems. And the PTR has been interesting. The PTR has been interesting and is still developing. And I want to bring you more content on that as that grows, because we still have very limited access to the new stuff coming in 8.2. But I realized I'd kind of fallen into the trap that I have, for like 5 years, told people don't do this, which is I had no goal. And therefore, everything is shit when you have no goal. Regardless of how good or bad the game is, it doesn't matter. If you have no goal, then you're just stuck with like the stuff that's presented to you like face on. It's often why this content exists, because a lot of people don't have goals. They don't set themselves some sort of challenge. They don't set themselves some sort of target. Certainly one that isn't vague. So when I had to think of a goal. I was like, what is my goal here? What do I want to do? When we set ourselves a goal, be it like a new account series or very specifically working out like how this healing setup works and things like that, then we have a goal that we log in. It's like, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I've got a plan of things to get done. I logged in with the mindset of, I haven't got anything to do. And the only thing that like stares me in the face to do is to get artifact power. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So I just logged out again. So a goal is required. A goal was required, and the goal I set myself is something I've been struggling with since the start of BFA, actually, is I really detest my mage. Like, I actually hate it, and I've struggled to choose something to replace it, because the minimum for my guild is 2 characters that you should be able to raid on effectively. And I was looking... I've ignored my mage ever since Battle for Dazar Allure has come out. Like, I've barely played it. I would be surprised if I've put more than a couple of hours into that character since BFD came out. And I was literally just stuck in this quagmire where pretty much I just wanted to play my druid, and that was about it. And my other character that fit into the guild roster was my mage. And I hated my mage. And there was no real need for my mage anymore, because mages are garbage right now. They're there for arcane intellect, and that's about it. And the idea of just being buff boy and playing a character I didn't particularly like really put me off doing anything with it. So I just kind of ignored it, and in some ways kind of hoped it would just go away, right? I hoped it would just go away. And I was thinking about this. I was like, I really need to find something that I do enjoy, something that I really do like, and focus on that, and then work on min-maxing that. And then that's where your goal comes from. So I have to be clear on what a goal is here. If your goal is something like, I want to kill... If you're a raider already, and your goal is to kill X boss, that's not really a goal. That's something you're going to do anyway, and it also takes place in a very limited window of when you can play the game. It's not a particular goal. It's just something you're going to be doing, but usually there's set raid nights. You have to wait for everybody else to be ready. In terms of a personal goal, it's not that much of a big deal. Same if it's something like, I want to be a raider. That can be a very noble goal, but most people's way of, I want to be a raider is, well, I'm going to go and gear up by doing things like LFR for practice, and I'm going to get every scrap of sort of more casual gear I can get. And that's the goal. And that's just character progression. Again, I don't consider that way a really good goal. If your goal to be a raider is, okay, I'm going to work on making a decent application, I'm going to look into creating myself some logs, I'm going to figure out how that works, I'm going to see where my problems are, and then I'm going to focus on fixing those problems. I'm going to analyze myself, as we've done several times on the channel, where we critique our own play and find out where we're going wrong. Doing all those kinds of things, that's a good goal. It depends on what you're doing. Just being like, I want a better character forehead, that's just not interesting. That's not going to get you anywhere, because that's what everybody in the game is doing. Like, you're never going to be any different than anybody else in the game if you're just going to be running around saying, I want to increase my item level, because that doesn't really get you anywhere in World of Warcraft anymore. Like, it certainly hasn't probably for the last 4 years, or even longer than that, but it doesn't really count towards getting anywhere. So, choosing an alt, I was thinking through basically the classes that I've recommended to you guys, like doing alpha and beta, but I've had some issue with that maybe they've developed and changed over the course of the expansion. So I'm going to go a little flavor of the month, and I'm fine with that because it's something I've kind of wanted to play for a long time, is I'm just going to focus on my shaman. And there's so much good about the shaman that I've liked. I've recommended the shaman, specifically elemental, but every shaman spec. I've recommended the shaman every single expansion since Warlords of Draenor, I believe. I think so. If I were to go back and check those videos, I'm pretty sure they've always been one of my top rated classes to choose for the new expansion. And most people who've gone that route have had a really, really good time with them. And every TDP or video or guide I've ever done with the shaman, the toolkit on offer in a lot of scenarios has been so fun that I clearly enjoy it. But one thing I particularly hate, and it's a pet peeve, is I don't like the race choices for the shaman, depending on which spec it is. I know it's silly, but we all have our silly things as to why we don't like certain things. I really do dislike, say, an Orc Elemental Shaman or an Orc Resto Shaman. However, an Orc Enhancement Shaman I really like. Yeah, I like a Troll Elemental Shaman. I think they're really cool, but give me a Troll Resto Shaman or a Troll Enhancement Shaman, and I can't stand looking at them. And it generally goes around in circles like this, where I'm eventually stuck in the scenario where I really dislike looking and being my character, and I'm using toys and fish and all kinds of things on a non-stop basis just to avoid that. And the idea of race changing every single time is just off-putting. So for those reasons, it's why I dropped the shaman out. And it's literally that simple. However, I found a middle ground, which is the goblin. I like the goblin for all three. It's not my favorite, but I like it for all three. So I have a goblin shaman, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to give the shaman a try. I like the shaman. I've always enjoyed the shaman for probably the last 4 or 5 years. So I'm going to kind of be focusing on shifting over to the shaman and bringing some gameplay on the shaman and stuff like that. And I think that then gives me another focus in terms of what I present to you, is like the learning curve of like, okay, I could pick up this class and do like 90% of what it should do. That'd be fine. But where do we find that extra 10%? Where do we find that thing that makes us distinctive from every other person who's currently re-rolling Elemental Shaman because they're quite popular, right? Where do we find that niche? So we're probably going to go through that series as well. It's been a weird time because it's been a stark reminder that WoW is what you make of it. And if you just kind of get into this slump where you're just like, I have nothing to do, there's nothing I want to do. And if there is literally nothing you want to do, then that's fine. That's no big deal. But there are always things I want to do, but finding the motivation. Now, in terms of every other character, because I'm sure some of you are going, okay, Mike's got every class now. We're going to see a big variety of characters. Yes, you are. This is a side goal, and we've been working on it today. The issue with this, of course, is due to how these characters came to be level 120, they are in a position where they are level 120, they have a level 1 Heart of Azeroth, and they are wearing the same gear they had at level 110. A lot of them started life at like item level 260, something like that, which is not good. Not good. But we have taken steps to remedy that today with some visits to the auction house and stuff. And on the side note of that, and this probably needs more exploration than I can do in this video, which is basically summarizing what the last week has been for me, is that it's pretty incredible that it takes less than 5 minutes to completely destroy any semblance of interest in the world content if you're looking for something interesting to do in world content. Very surprising that it takes around 10,000 gold to get a character to like 330 plus. And at 330 plus, that's it. You're good. You can do nearly everything in the game in a really good way. You're not going to be a top DPSer by any means. But what you will do, and certainly surprise the fuck out of me, is once I hit like 330, I was out DPSing so many people. And it's just... This is the bit that needs further exploration. It's not a case of those guys are bad either. It's the apathy that comes with the content they're doing because it is so dog shit easy. is these guys are just not interested. They're basically like half auto-attacking, half watching Netflix. That's all these guys are doing, and this is then translating into further gameplay because, of course, you're just kind of like playing the game to find the quickest way to tomorrow is how it felt for a lot of this gameplay that I was seeing out there. And that's part of the reason I wanted to make this video as well, is talking about, like, set a goal. Don't just exist. Like, it's so fucking sad to see. It's just people who are clearly just, like, not interested in what they're doing at all. No interest. Now, they might be doing a goal, and they might choose to think this content is dog shit easy, so of course I'm going to half-arse it. But it was pretty apparent that the apathy in doing a lot of this content that has been made easier and easier is really strong, and it also really counters what Blizzard's doing with the Essence system, because the Essence system for the most part is just an enormous power gain. People already have way more power than they're utilizing, like on a very, very widespread basis. Like, these guys already have access to these cannons in terms of the gear they've acquired from doing, you know, you're doing your Warfronts, you're doing your Ibis, you're doing all this stuff. They already have access to these cannons, yet it's totally pointless. It's totally pointless, and they don't use it. They're basically meleeing with this nuclear cannon instead of firing the nuclear cannon, because everything will die by just hitting it in the face with it instead of wasting the energy on actually firing the damn thing. And that's been something that's become very apparent to me very quickly while dealing with this process. It's going to be interesting the next few weeks. We have lots of little projects to deal with, which is something that I'm happy. I'm more than happy with that, because I did log in and I was just like, okay, there's just nothing to do in this game besides farm AP. Like, that was the mindset, is like, I haven't set myself any challenge. There's nothing I want to do. I'm just going to log out. I'd rather play 2 Point Hospital or Sekiro or Tropico or any of the other amazing games we've played recently that have the infinite gameplay replayability while still being difficult, interesting, creative, all these elements of these games. Or I could go and do, like, collector quests and, you know, shell games and stuff like that. And it was very, very off-putting and very depressing, actually, because I was like, what am I looking at here? What am I looking at? But hopefully I think I'm past that. So look forward to that, guys. I hope everything's going well with you. If you've not been keeping up with the other stuff, by the way, I have been casting, like, nearly every single show of the Method post-raid situation in the Crucible of Storms, which has turned out to have been one of the most intense raids that we've ever seen. And honestly, Unat is looking to be, and probably the history will remain of the fight in its current state as we see it, as the most difficult raid boss ever designed, for a number of reasons that I've gone into in these shows. Very different than what we see with bosses that come out with fresh raid tiers, like we'll see with the Rise of Ashara. This is a different beast entirely. This is Blizzard, like, having a lot of fun, and also the raiders having a lot of fun by having something in front of them that they can't overpower, overgear, and can't overclass either. Like, Blizzard has designed these fights, and certainly Unat, to prevent that entirely. Like, they don't want you overgearing it next week. They don't want you overclassing it by class stacking. They have decided to go, we know exactly what you've got, and now we're going to really challenge you, because only a few of the world can actually tackle these fights at this point. And no doubt these fights are going to be nerfed later on. So if you are interested in that, check that out. I'm usually live with those guys. I've been on most shows. The only show I'm not doing is tonight, but I think I'm back on tomorrow. And also the Method YouTube channel has all the VODs of that as this race has progressed. So pay attention to that as well, guys. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.